Yummy! Yuppa! Yay! Yay! Abba!
This man is fighting for his life. He may look healthy, but he is suffering from a rare and deadly form of lymphoma. His name is Yehuda Kaplan. He is 32 years old, and he lives in Melbourne, Australia, with his wife Orly and daughter Avishag. Yehuda has one chance. If he can find a bone marrow donor, his chances of survival will increase dramatically. But for biological reasons, bone marrow donors are almost never found outside one's own ethnic group. Generally, only Japanese can donate to Japanese, Italians to Italians, and only a Jew can donate bone marrow to another Jew.
Yes.
And Yehuda is of a mixed background. His father is a Polish Jew, his mother a Jew from Tunisia. This mixture of Sephardi and Ashkenazi parents makes Yehuda's search all the more difficult. This is the tissue typing laboratory at the Red Cross Blood Bank in Melbourne. Here, blood samples from potential donors are analysed to see if a match can be found. But why is a compatible bone marrow donor so difficult to find?
The numbers that are represented here are the different tissue types that exist. Now, when you inherit a tissue type from a parent, you get 1A and 1B and 1C from each parent. They're called haplotypes, and each individual is made up of 2 haplotypes, that is one from each parent. When you're looking at all the different tissue types, one of the things that's really obvious is the ethnic or geographical background that people have come from, which is reflected in the various HLA types. They're represented by numbers. In this particular type here, an A30, B38 is what we would identify as a typical sort of Eastern European Jewish haplotype. 38 is fairly common in the Jewish population, and particularly with an A30. You can actually interpret these numbers to explain people's genetic history or geographical history as to where they came from. And obviously in Melbourne there's a lot of mixtures that have occurred. The Second World War has a lot to answer for. At this particular haplotype here, this would also be a Jewish person. We have an A26, B38, which is a really standard, what we call New York Jewish haplotype that's there, but also has an A11, B60, which would indicate that that's an Oriental Jewish haplotype. And I've been told that this person is part Sephardi and part Ashkenazi. When we're matching the transplants, we have to match the numbers exactly. There's no near misses. There's no opportunity for us to say, well, 60 is almost like a 61, so we'll put a 61 in there instead. It has to match exactly. The reason being is that these markers here are your immune response genes. They are designed to process what's foreign in your body and to get rid of it. They are the window to the world in the sense that they know what is self, what is your own particular tissue type, and what is definitely you as opposed to anything foreign. And their role is to reject anything that's foreign. If they're not exactly matched, then we have a horrible disease called graft versus host disease, and that's a very common form of death in these patients once they've been transplanted.
And so, the Melbourne Jewish community rallies to Yehuda's support. Regular donathons are held at convenient locations in Jewish suburbs. Small blood samples are taken for testing to see if the match can be found with anyone who needs a donation.
It really, it's something to be proud of. Just been, and that's all it is.
And who knows if that's relevant?
Rabbinical blood, worth its weight in gold.
Good morning. Have you come to donate? Yeah. Okay, great. If I can ask you to fill out 3 forms. Okay, there's pens on the...
A volunteer organisation known as Keren Hayeled has undertaken the Search for Life. Organiser Alan Fagelin is talking on a Melbourne Jewish radio program.
Yes, so we've had about 20 or 30 people have come through already for testing, and people are coming in steadily. It's been very, very pleasing. And I'd like to, while I'm talking to you on SBS Radio, I would like to say to all the listeners out there that all the other communities should arrange drives like this. The Greek community, the Italian, all the communities need to do this sort of thing. It's very important.
Those who take the test know that if they do match, they may have to undergo the inconvenient and sometimes painful procedure of donating bone marrow. So what is it that moves people to come and volunteer?
One of the reasons I've come is because our son's in the Israeli army. He's been in now for 3 weeks, and I think it's made me more aware that if anything's going to happen to him, for example, that he gets the help that Yehuda will get as willingly as what we're giving it, basically. Because I don't think before that I would have been so willing to come forward. But my wife mentioned it to me on Friday when she saw the advertisement in the paper. And I just didn't even think about whether I should or not. I've just decided to come.
I actually have a sister who died of leukemia over 30 years ago, and they just couldn't help. They gave transfusions and they gave injections to dull the pain and possibly cortisone, I don't know. I was much younger, but there was nothing they could do. And I just hope that they find someone for Yehuda.
In a situation such as this, there is no more you can give than part of yourself. It's absolutely classless. It also signifies a situation in which the community have to draw together as human beings, not based on their material means, but purely as human beings.
What one is giving here is the possibility of a life, and there is no greater gift than to give a chance for life. And no matter how many hundreds or thousands of dollars one is able to give physically, this is a more precious gift.
And there's one. There's another form actually that needs to be signed.
Time is of the essence, but time can run out, as Stan Burkhoff discovered when his son Isaac was suffering from leukemia.
Isaac was a very young, happy, active, sport-minded, and very friendly sort of a boy. He was he encouraged a lot of people. They liked him. He was that sort of a guy. He didn't have any. He never had a bad bone in his body. He never said anything bad about anybody. And it seems rather strange that the age of barely 11 years of age, he should suddenly be told that he has leukemia. From this family's point of view, quite devastating. And as I would think there would be for any family that has to confront the fact that there is cancer in the family. And for 2 solid years, he had constant chemotherapy. And it was just prior to his bar mitzvah that he was given a clean go. And they told him that there was no signs of any leukemic blasts in his system. And of course, everybody was absolutely hysterical, and he celebrated his bar mitzvah, and we had a marvelous, wonderful celebration. And it was highlighted by the miracle of what we thought we had experienced. Unfortunately, in the ensuing months, there wasn't much long after that, in Simchat Torah actually, he relapsed. When this happened, it was suggested that, and it's always been in the back of our mind, that bone marrow transplant would be a method or a way of coping with this problem. And so we started to search. We searched through all our family right around the world. We have family in America, and I have family in England, and without any success, unfortunately. And then we then went to what we call the search internationally. I then got the Mizrahi organization here, which are wonderful people, and they offered their Goldberger Hall, and twice and sometimes 3 times a week in the evenings between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock, or 5:30 and 7:30, we did blood testing. Unfortunately, we were unable to find a match for Isaac, and he didn't quite survive, and he passed away last April.
In the wider community too, patients may have to search far and wide for a donor. This Australian woman, originally from England, found a donor in England through a search of the English bone marrow registries. She would not be alive today if that donor had not been found.
Well, I'm one of those people that never thought that everything had ever happened to me, you know, really and truly. You don't. You take your good health for granted. And then one day, the doctor turns around and says, "Pardon me, but you've got chronic myeloid leukemia," and you take one big gulp and think, leukemia, that's that horrible thing, you know, that happens to other people, it doesn't happen to me. But it did. Finally, on the 1st of June 1989, I had my transplant. And it was very traumatic, because it is really, even the work up to before the transplant itself is quite horrific. And you are very sick even before you get the transplant. And I was, they say, a week to 10 days was all I had left to live. So they don't like doing transplants when you're that sick, because it makes the odds go down, you know. But they did it, and I gave them all the problems I could think of, and I gave them a few I didn't even think of, and I made their life absolute hell for 4 months. And then the doctor used to come and say to me, "Barbara, I think we're seeing a bit of light at the end of the tunnel." I thought, this is a blooming long tunnel.
Get in contact with me or not. And then
This Australian woman donated bone marrow to a woman in New Zealand.
Did you ever have any second thoughts about it before you went in to give the donation?
No, none at all. The only thing I did watch was there was a show on Yarn Events about bone marrow and the donors, and one of the donors come out of theatre and she said she'd been kicked by a mule, and I thought, oh, how hard does this mule kick? That was the only hesitation I sort of had, but when I come out I found that it didn't kick at all, so I was lucky. Well, the reason I went on the registrar was that I've got 4 children. They're all luckily healthy at this stage, but I thought, well, if any one of those children needed bone marrow at any stage in their life, I know that parents and family are not always compatible, that I'd like to know there was a registrar out there with people who are willing to give it to my children, and I was healthy, there was nothing wrong with me, and I thought if I could do the same in return for someone else, it's no loss to me, so I thought, well, I'd go ahead and do it.
Would you put your finger there and press that?
Oh, sure.
Well, Chaim, that was fabulous. Nearly as good as eating herring and bagels.
Yehuda must search the overseas bone marrow registries for people with the same Sephardi Ashkenazi parentage as his own. But that search can be terribly expensive. And so, Keren Hayeled has pledged its support in the search for funds, as well as for bone marrow. We asked Alan Feiglin how the campaign was going.
When a first level match of a donor is found overseas, it costs us about, now we know, it costs us about $250 Australian each time to have the testing done. Now Yehuda had something like 65 first level matches overseas in Italy, Great Britain, Spain, all over the place. And 65 times 250 is $15,000. That's before we even blink. The first $5,000 is now used up. We've just paid out the second $5,000 this week, in fact. Now, this is simply for testing possible donors. What Keren Hayeled's aim is now, as well as saving Yehuda, that's our prime aim, is to show every Jewish person, show every community that Jews must go out and get themselves onto the international register. We can only save ourselves. There are 3 other people now in Melbourne, Adelaide, and we don't know, I haven't heard back from New South Wales, but there are 3 other Jewish people seeking bone marrow donors. It's not just Yehuda. There is a lady in London, her campaign is just beginning. There is Jay Feinberg in the United States, and there are many others that we don't know about. The question is, are we limited to only helping people in our own town, or do we look at the whole Jewish community all over the world? And it's not our responsibility for Keren Hayeled here to look over the world, but it is our responsibility to make others aware that something can be done about it. And for that we need money.
In the Jewish tradition, we say that when a person has saved a life, it is as if he or she has saved the whole world. For those involved in the quest for bone marrow donors, it means searching the world to save that one life.
I'm very thankful to all the people that will go out there and donate, because there's people like me that don't ever think it's going to happen to them. It is going to happen to them. So please donate.
The more the merrier. If everybody could only be registered, there would be more and more success rates, because that is what it's all about. It's a numbers game. The numbers have to match, and the more people make themselves available will enhance the chance of people who are suffering with the various forms of cancer that need bone marrow transplantation, particularly in the cases of leukemia. They've got a wonderful opportunity of success with your assistance.
I'm really overwhelmed. I didn't ever expect that I would receive such support from people who are really complete strangers that most of the people I've never met before.
Giving a bone marrow donation is classified as a major organ donation. The only difference is that the donor remains alive and well afterwards, and the organ fully regenerates itself. This is a case where you can give a major organ donation and remain totally unaffected.
Everyone that comes forward has a possibility of saving a life, and I only wish that that could have happened for my son.
It's a glow, you feel happy. It's hard to explain. It's just a glow that you know that you've done something and it saved someone's life. It's different to childbirth or anything like that. It's a thing on its own. It's really hard to describe.
It's like Meg said before, there is no greater gift you can give than the gift of prolonging human life. And it's a matter of giving of yourself, not from your checkbook or from your pocket or from your business or, in a scene like this, you can't say I gave at the office. You give of yourself, do it. Just do it.